All right, welcome back to the 19th Annual Georgia Bioinnovation Summit. This week has been a huge success, and we cannot thank our sponsors, speakers, exhibitors, and other partners enough. I would once again like to thank Werner Ingelheim and Everett Hoekstra for his leadership of the event. He, along with his team, have been a crucial partner, especially these last few weeks. Everett will be closing out the conference after this afternoon's keynote, so please stay tuned to hear his brief remarks. And before I get into our next item, I do want to do a special shout out to my team and our volunteers here who've made this week possible. So due to some audio issues this morning, we're going to share this morning's Center for Global Health Innovation announcement from Clark Dean, Executive Managing Director and Partner for Transaction Sciences with Transwestern, and a board member of the Center for Global Health Innovation. So I'm going to turn it over to Clark's presentation, and we appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as to why we have to replay this.
Georgia Bioinnovation Summit. It is my pleasure to present this briefing, an update on an exciting project we've been working on for almost 2.5 years for a global health innovation district. So as Maria has shared, the Center for Global Health Innovation really exists to unite the global health technology, and life sciences community, not only here in Atlanta and Georgia, but truly around the world. We're doing so through the activities of 5 different divisions. As you know, Georgia Bio is one of those divisions, along with the Georgia Global Health Alliance, the STEM Institute, the recently launched Global Health Crisis Coordination Center, which was launched to help connect and coordinate the private sector in the response for COVID and the pandemic. And then lastly, the Global Health Innovation District. So when we started this process 2.5 years ago, we got together with members of the community. Many of you provided input on what you wanted to do together. Believing that form should always follow function, we tried to figure out what is it you want to do in a district? What would make a powerful hub, and what value would it create? What we heard is that you guys wanted a place that would stimulate, accelerate and facilitate innovation, crisis response, value creation, research and development, mobilization, collaboration, and capital raising around global health technology, and life sciences. In particular around innovation, we heard that you wanted problem-driven innovation, or some refer to as Pascal's quadrant, this idea of having user-inspired and use-inspired innovation and invention and research. We started by looking at the whole network of this global health technology, and life sciences ecosystem. Where these entities exist today, where are the research universities, where are the corporate sponsors, and you can see it sort of scattered out all over the metro Atlanta area. What we found after studying and talking to folks, that there was really a central point that was the center of gravity for this entire network, and that existed right here at the intersection of Georgia Tech's Tech Square, which is marching south, and Emory's Midtown campus marching north. This seemed to be an ideal place to really anchor this ecosystem of global health technology, and life sciences, and provide for additional development and growth to attract these groups together to really facilitate all of the activities that we want to within the ecosystem. The particular building that we are in the process of finalizing our negotiations with is known as Tower Square. It's the former headquarters for Bell South and then AT&T here in Atlanta. It is actually about 2 blocks away from Tech Square's CODA development, catty-cornered to Anthem's new innovation center, across the street from the new Norfolk Southern headquarters building that's under construction, and about 1.5 blocks away from Emory's new cancer tower that's being built right directly south of the Bank of America Plaza in Midtown. It sits right on a MARTA stop, so the MARTA actually comes up into the building and provides a multimodal way for members of this ecosystem to get from their various nodes on the network to the central place that's authentically ours as an entire ecosystem, and not controlled by one entity or another. In fact, during the process, we often refer to this as Project Fort, using this analogy that if Maria and I are elementary school friends, and I go over to Maria's house and we build a fort in her backyard, it's Maria and Clark's fort, but it kind of feels like Maria's fort because it's in her backyard. And if we went to my house and did the same thing, it's Maria and Clark's fort, but it kind of feels like Clark's fort because it's in his backyard. But if we went to that, empty lot in between our houses or the woods next door and built our fort there, it's authentically ours. What the Global Health Innovation District will prove to be is a place that can truly be a place that everyone shares in the whole ecosystem to work together. This particular building, as many of you know, is very big. It's a 45-story tower with a 7-story adjacent annex building. And for the core collaborative infrastructure, Gensler has helped us put together designs for 2 floors of collaborative co-working space, co-working with a purpose. They'll be available for members of this ecosystem to take single desks, small office suites, medium office suites, or large office suites to enable that collaborative activity around the innovation programming that will be occurring at the center. It'll also have wet lab co-working space on the 3rd floor, and we can expand that to be 1 or more of those laboratory floors to accommodate larger laboratory requirements as well. And then we have the conference center, which will be a world-class conference center. What we heard so much from this group of people within the ecosystem is that they're meeting in subpar hotel ballrooms all over the metropolitan area. What they really needed was a highly professional, well-resourced conference center with a hospitality approach to convening. This will be complete with food service and beautiful spaces that really stimulate and inspire people and participants. The conference center this is an early rendering of the conference center. This particular kind of center stage area will be perfect for TED Talks, for vendor presentations, et cetera, that occur during conference days. Through that feature, you can see the food service area, which will be a food service marketplace. We'll cater the entire innovation center, the 2 floors of office and the laboratory floors as well, and provide food service for the conferencing that occurs in the conference center. This particular slide shows a rendering of the lounge area associated with the co-working office space. So this will occur on 2 different floors within the tower, and will provide areas of coffee bar, lounge seating to enable that collaboration beyond just the conference rooms and the individual offices that will exist in the co-working office component to help build community. This is desperately small, right? So ridiculously small for you guys. But what you can see on the left is the renderings for the conference center. We can see down towards the bottom, we'll have a very large general session room. This is 70,000 square foot floor plate. So a very large general session room that can be broken in 2. You have appropriate breakout areas for different meetings and presentations. That area to the left center, you see is the food service market. Up to the top in the middle, we have the Emergency Operations Center for the GHC3 that already includes many corporate partners, NGOs, and others in the private sector who have really come together to create new solutions and important solutions during the COVID crisis. As you proceed across the bridge between the annex and the tower building, what we can see is the 1st floor of the co-working office. That will be the headquarters for the Center for Global Health Innovation. It'll also have a variety of large corporates, small corporates, startup entities, research universities, and others who wish to collaborate around global health, health technology, and life sciences. This represents the 2nd floor. Again, as you can see, a different combination of small offices, mid-sized offices, large offices, and collaborative conference space and training rooms that will exist in the tower space. And then lastly, we have this wet lab area. So this is a full floor of wet lab spaces, both collaborative bench areas, so people that just need 1 bench for their research, but then also private labs that are available for groups that want private labs for various durations, from small labs up to medium-sized labs that could be connected, all the way up to large-scale laboratories. The 2nd floor of lab space that we're envisioning will actually have larger scale labs for graduating entities as they proceed. And that is so that gives you an idea of the context that exists in this planned development. What we would like to get from you is your interest in participating. If you are interested in participating in either the co-working office space or the co-working laboratory space, please send an email to our favorite Maria Thacker-Gopi. Let her know. We can provide additional information and set up a consultation to discuss how you can get involved in this exciting initiative. As we said, we are finalizing our negotiations and look forward to, with a targeted launch date of fourth quarter of 2021. So again, fourth quarter of 2021 is what we're targeting, and we look forward to having many of you participate in this exciting development. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Very exciting news for our ecosystem. Now, before we dive into the keynote, we have awards for our poster session and pitch round to announce. So to announce the winners of the Tony Shuker Scientific Poster Competition, I would like to welcome Dr. Stacy Shuker with Down South Innovations. Stacy?
Stacy, you are muted.
I knew I would do that. Hey, everybody, it's good to see you. I'm sorry it can't be in person, but this is the best that we can do. And we've got some great winners this year for the poster session. And but first of all, I want to thank Georgia Bio for always allowing me to participate in the poster session and remembering Tony. Tony would be so thrilled to know that his poster session has lasted this many years and has inspired so many students. I think it would put a big smile on his heart. And so thank you, Georgia Bio. Thank you, Maria Thacker and Christina Forbes, for your flawless organization of this event. Thank you, UCB, for being the sponsor. This poster session is not free and it is not cheap. I mean, the judging is free, but everything else that goes into the poster session is not free or cheap. And so thank you, UCB, for sponsoring us. I also want to thank my team, Rick Hillstead, Carol McMahon, and Chris Cornelison. This crew has, I couldn't do it without you. We do it every year. We look forward to seeing each other every year, and we look forward to seeing the students. And then lastly, I want to thank all of the students. This year was incredibly difficult. Not only did they have to talk about their posters, but they had to stare into the endless abyss of a camera lens. And it has taken me forever to learn how to talk to a camera. And, you know, I'm just giving away deviled egg plates and talking about Southern Home Goods. I'm not talking about flow cytometry or second harmonic generation or anything like that. So each and every one of you who participated in the poster session, you're awesome. You did a great job. And we labored over each and every one of these winners, and we thank you all for your participation. So we have 3 general winners, Georgia Bio poster winners, and then we have 2 special awards that I will do last. So the first 3 winners are Brian Jurgelweitz of UGA for the utilization of imaging flow cytometry to assess extracellular vesicle internalization. The second winner is Emily Pendleton, also of UGA, for polarimetric second harmonic generation, can be performed in full thickness bone and is useful in discriminating between healthy and diseased states. And the third winner is Manny Vakalanka of Mercer, a novel diagnostic method for detection and quantitation of paralytic shellfish poisoning in humans. Okay, so we have 2 special awards. One is sponsored by one of our longtime judges, Rick Hillstead, and it's for a medical device poster, and it goes to Lori Estes of UGA, and it is for the characterization of combined therapy of nitric oxide donor molecule and serum oxide nanoparticles for antimicrobial applications. And then finally is the Down South House and Home Award for Grace and Poise. And this is my favorite award. I love sponsoring this award. For those of you who knew Tony, he loved helping students, but he also loved being up in front of people and being able to communicate science so that everybody could understand it. So I like to give this special award for somebody who did a great job of communicating their science. Either, in the past it's been at the poster session, but in this case, the way that they came across on the video, the way they communicated their science, I like to give this award as a special kudos for somebody who is great at communicating science. So this award goes to Sarah Spalding of Mercer, and it's for the characterization of e-cigarette aerosol deposition in the human lung airways with a comparison to conventional tobacco cigarettes. And we always look for a real world application for most of these posters, and we thought Sarah Spalding was charming and on point. So everyone, thank you always for letting me continue to host and chair this poster session. Thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to Georgia Bio. It's one of the highlights of my year, and I love being able to do this. So I appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Maria. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Stacy, and congratulations to all our poster winners. Our team will be in touch next week to get you your prizes. I would now like to invite Sherry Ferrugia, I would like now to invite Sherry Ferrugia, Interim CEO for the Global Center for Medical Innovation, to announce the winners of this week's pitch round. Sherry?
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Maria, for the introduction. I'm Sherry Ferrugia, and I will be announcing the winners of the Georgia Bio's first ever pitch round competition. I currently serve as the Interim Chief Executive Officer for the Global Center for Medical Innovation, GCMI, which is one of the sponsors for this competition. GCMI is the nation's proving ground for medical innovation. We were stood up in the region to support accelerating medical device development. And our mission is really to help direct the development, testing, training, and commercialization of innovative medical products that improved outcomes and healthcare for patients throughout the nation. I'd like to also thank our co-sponsor, 1110 Innovation Partners, for their support as well. And this year we had 13 applications for the competition, and 5 were selected to compete for the final round. Those 5 are Cathade Inc., Ethos Medical, KBLV Medical LLC, Patientory, RCE Technologies Inc. As a reminder, our first place winner will receive $2,500 prize money, and the second place winner will receive $1,500. But before I announce the winners, I'd also like to thank the selection committee and my fellow judges for lending their time and expertise to make this session possible. I'll tell you that as I was judging, it was really tough. I mean, the final 5 were extremely impressive. And if I was a multimillionaire, I would have invested in all of them. Unfortunately, I'm not, so I'm sorry to tell you all that. If I win the lottery, I'll be in touch. Thank you to everyone who volunteered their time to judge. And without further ado, I'd like to announce our second place winner, Cassidy Wang of Ethos Medical. Congratulations, Cassidy. And now I would like to announce our first place winner, Atondra Berman of RCE Technologies. Congratulations, Atondra. And again, huge congratulations to everyone who participated. And, we hope to see you again next year and appreciate everyone's support. And Maria and Christina, certainly a huge shout out to the 2 of you and Courtney for pulling this together and it just running so seamlessly. So congratulations, and look forward to seeing everyone soon.
Thank you, Sherry, and congratulations to our winning companies, RCE Technologies and Ethos Medical. And of course, thank you to all of our judges. And I do want to do a special shout out to Jason Rupp, whose conference, the Southeast Life Sciences Conference, is next week. So do take a look at that, especially if you're a small company or a medium or big company looking for investments. That is the Southeast Life Science Investor Conference. And I'd also like to, again, thank Courtney Law, who's our newest team member and heads up entrepreneurship and innovation, for helping lead our pitch rounds, company showcase, and innovation stage. So we have a full session for this final keynote of the week, so let's get down to it. I'm very excited about today's keynote, which will discuss reimagining the future of life sciences and public health. In fact, since today's theme is very much around workforce and inspiring young people, I'm wearing my t-shirt for our BioEd Institute Rural Teacher Training Program. There's a big cool logo on the back. Which last school year, this training program, which is a public-private partnership with the state of Georgia and industry, we trained 72 bioscience master teachers, exposing over 11,500 students across rural Georgia to careers in the life sciences. So, and I should do a special shout out to Kristen and Megan on my STEM team, who have done an amazing job since we've taken this program on about a year and a half ago. So to introduce our keynote, I would like to welcome Holly Snow, Director of State Government Affairs for Amgen. Amgen is a Georgia Bio champion and was a crucial partner for us in the launch of our first ever Patient Advocacy Summit earlier this year. Holly?
Thank you, Maria, and the Georgia Bio team. Amgen is proud to be a sponsor of this year's annual summit, despite the challenging and strange year that all of us have experienced. We at Amgen have humbly celebrated our 40th anniversary. We're very proud of our heritage as a biotech startup, our people, our culture, and our dedication to our mission, and always doing the right thing in everything we do. It's what makes Amgen a great and special place to work. Together, we transform how patients, physicians, caregivers, and societies around the world fight serious illnesses and high unmet medical need. We discover, develop, and deliver transformative medicines that address the leading causes of death and disability. We find new solutions to meet the growing demand for better quality healthcare for more people worldwide. Now to our summit. Securing the right talent for a dynamic industry characterized by disruptive discoveries, an ever-complex regulatory environment, and the globalization of healthcare are all leading concerns for our life science executives. While it takes a mix of skills to meet the workforce needs of a growing health and life sciences industry, strong growth in highly skilled health and life sciences jobs in Georgia signals a continued commitment to innovation and product development in the state that is critical for a global competitive industry. Today's session will explore the career paths of two accomplished executives and hear their perspectives on STEM careers, the importance of the patient voice, and more. Moderating this session is Phil Gibson, Director of the Georgia Biosciences Training Center for Georgia Quick Start and Chair for the Georgia BioEd Institute. Phil?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to Amgen for sponsoring this session. I want to express my appreciation for Georgia Bio for putting this together, particularly for focusing this third day on workforce and how expressing how important that is as an aspect of our industry. So I am indeed the director of the Georgia Bioscience Training Center. It is in Social Circle, Georgia, and it is pictured behind me. What we do here at Quick Start is we develop customized training material for client companies who are creating jobs in the state of Georgia, either new companies coming to the state or existing companies that are creating jobs. So we're all about job creation, and that's what we do. And it is customized training, so we are quite capable of delivering whatever kind of training a company might need. So joining me today, I have a couple of guests who definitely have made their way in this industry. And so I'd like to start by asking Mary Dunkel to introduce herself. Mary?
Sure. Thank you, Phil. And thanks to Georgia Bio for organizing this great conference and inviting NORD to be a part of it. My name is Mary Dunkel, and I'm a senior advisor to NORD, which is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. It's a nonprofit organization representing the 30 million Americans who are affected by rare diseases. And rare is defined in the US as any disease affecting fewer than 200,000 Americans. There are currently somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 known rare diseases. And if you're curious about them, you can see the entire list on the National Institutes of Health website. NORD was established in 1983 by leaders of rare disease patient organizations who had worked together to get a certain law passed by Congress and signed by President Reagan. It's called the Orphan Drug Act. It's still in effect today, and it's been very, very important in making it possible for research to be done and products, treatments, and diagnostics to be developed for people with rare diseases. Because without this legislation, companies just couldn't recover the expense of developing these treatments. In the nearly 40 years that it's been in existence now, NORD has provided programs that fall essentially in 4 categories. And it's advocacy, education, patient family services, and research. And just to very, very briefly give examples of the types of things we do. If you heard Dr. McMurray-Heath's really excellent presentation on the first day of this conference, she talked about the importance of the patient voice being heard both by researchers and regulatory officials. So for instance, NORD works with government staff at the National Institutes of Health and the Food and Drug Administration. We're currently working with FDA on something we call listening sessions, where FDA staff can hear directly from patients and parents of patients and other caregivers about the burden of their disease and what's really important to them in treatments being developed for that disease. So in addition to that sort of federal advocacy, which also includes working with Congress, we have a network of state volunteers, including right here in Georgia, and we call this the Rare Action Network. In education, which is the area where I've been most involved, we provide education for patients and caregivers, for students, for medical professionals, and others. Our patient family services are primarily to help patients access the treatments that their physicians think they should have. And in the area of research, we're working, we provide research grants, and we're also working on things like right before this meeting, I was on a call with a team involved in something called the Rare Disease Cures Accelerator, which is an FDA-funded project to make it possible for patients to contribute their data to help support research on their diseases. So thank you for including me, Phil.
Thank you, Mary. And it is fascinating that it's been 40 years since that law was passed, and I don't know if we've ever made any effort to quantify the additional things that we've learned from the research that was facilitated by that type of thing. You know, that has made its way into other sorts of treatments as well. So I think it's not only addressing the rare disease community, but it's addressing everyone in that respect. So thank you very much. Our next guest is Rishi Desai, and Rishi, I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Thank you again for having me. It's a huge pleasure. I have been in a few different parts of the country. So I trained as a medical doctor. I grew up in California, trained in California, went to Boston and became a pediatrician. And after that, spent a couple of years doing a fellowship in infectious diseases, went to the CDC and did virus outbreak research, which of course, now that we're living through COVID, has served me well in terms of thinking about this pandemic. I was an outbreak investigation officer there at the CDC, lived in Georgia, and after that, turned my career towards education. So I worked at Khan Academy for a few years, made videos, sort of doodled on a blackboard and talked about various health conditions. Those videos got out on YouTube. And that was what I did for a handful of years. And it was very interesting work for me, especially because I was trained in medicine in a very kind of jargony way. And then I was trying to translate that to a general YouTube audience. And then how do you do that in a way that's compelling and interesting and still stays true to the science? And since then, I moved over to Osmosis, which is a company that is really focused on healthcare education. So at Osmosis, I'm the chief medical officer, and my day-to-day is really to make sure that the content we're creating, the videos, the questions, the assessments, are really meeting the needs of students as well as professionals. We do CME and patients. And so trying to make sure that all those different audiences are feeling like their educational needs are being served.
Thank you, Rishi. So my first question is directed to Mary. And Mary, would you tell us a little bit about, I'm sure there is some point when you were young, you said, you know what, I think I'd like to work at Nord. So I suspect that's not exactly the way that it went. So share with us a little bit of how you ended up there at Nord.
Sure, I'll be happy to. And that's totally not the way it went. You're absolutely right. When I was in college, I had my career goals were to work either in journalism or publishing. So I took a lot of courses in history, political science, that sort of thing, writing, obviously. And then when I graduated, I realized that I would have to start fairly low on the totem pole and gain some experience and work my way up. So actually my first job was with a small town newspaper as a proofreader, which totally was not what I wanted to be, but it was a way to get a foot in the door. And then I, on my own time, began writing some stories and offering those to the editor, and eventually a few got published. And so then I got eventually to become a reporter, and later moved to a somewhat larger newspaper in Pennsylvania. My first job had been in Indiana, where I grew up. And I, looking back, I think being a newspaper reporter in those days, at least, was a really great education into how things get done and how communities work. And we covered school boards and town councils and that sort of thing. But anyway, I went from there to Pennsylvania State University. I had an opportunity to be a writer, editor in the office of the vice president for research there. And it was actually a fascinating job. I got to interview faculty members in all of the university's colleges about their research, and then write stories about it so that the public could understand what they were trying to do and why it was important. So this included some writing about medical research at Penn State's College of Medicine, but it also included things like writing about research being done in the College of Agriculture. I remember writing a story about sweeter sweet corn, new sort of genetically engineered corn that had been developed there, and it was indeed much sweeter. So anyway, that job, I loved it, loved Penn State, was there for about 11 years. But then my husband's work took us to the Boston area. We lived there for 1 year, and then his work again took us to the New York City area. And so I became the public relations director for our local hospital in the town in Connecticut where I lived. Did that for a few years. And then because our children were growing up and needed a chauffeur to take them to soccer practice and that sort of thing, I did freelance writing for a few years. And then I saw an ad in the newspaper for a medical editor at Nord. And I was just intrigued. I had never thought of rare diseases as a distinct entity. So I went for an interview, met the woman who was president of Nord at that time actually was the founder, and she was one of the advocates who had played a leading role in getting this Orphan Drug Act passed by Congress. She had children with a rare disease, and I just found her and the organization so fascinating. And so that was 22 years ago, and I'm still doing it. That was my path.
That is fascinating. It seems like one of the things that people do is when doors open, you step through them. And sometimes that's scary and you're not sure that it's going to work out, but you have taken those chances and ended up there. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Rishi, my next question is directed at you. You have given us a little bit of information about the things that you went through to end up there at Osmosis. But in listening to your description, I thought, oh my gosh, that could never be me. I couldn't have all those accomplishments. So give us a little bit of an idea of how you made all that happen.
First of all, I'm going to have to quote you on that and have you say that to my mom. I think she'd be pleased to hear that. Second of all, I think a lot of it is just curiosity. My fundamental belief is that, and you see this with kids, is that we're all born curious. And I have this thing in my head, kind of my own mantra, I guess, which is don't let education get in the way of learning. I think all too often formalized education kind of kills that love of learning. I think we all have that curiosity because it becomes a little stale, kind of like you're told you have to do something. I remember in school, I was told I had to read a book and I didn't want to read it at all. I thought that was just an assignment I just kind of had to get through. It was Oliver Twist, if you want to know the book. And then once that class was over, I read it and I was like, gosh, this is a great book. I love this book. And so that was for me kind of always true. I loved learning. I didn't like education. And so carrying that forward, what I would say to folks that are kind of interested in like, how do you get this career that you kind of cobbled together, which is essentially what I think I've done, is I think following that curiosity. You know, when I was at the CDC, I was writing papers. One day I came across this thing called Khan Academy and I thought that's interesting. I surf YouTube like probably most people listening do as well. And I thought that's interesting. Let me just learn a little bit more about that. My partner, now my wife, told me about it and said, hey, you should try this out. I think you might be a good teacher. And so I bought a little tablet and I let that curiosity drive me. I didn't have any end game. I wasn't thinking, oh, one day I want to go work at this company or anything like that. I just thought, let me just see if I can make a video. And then I had to learn how to upload a video. Go figure, that was not the easiest process in the world. And so you kind of stumble across things like this. And I think just letting curiosity drive you at every juncture is the key. You know, if there's that job that you think you're not qualified for, just apply, just see what happens. You know, if there's that phone call you're not sure if you should make, just make it, see what happens. So that would be my advice in terms of like what to do to try to cobble together a career that's fulfilling.
That is great advice. You know, we always say the great cliche, follow your dreams, whatever you dream. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done. And so that might be something that we should suggest that people do. So Mary, if you were to provide some advice for young people just starting their careers, what would be the most critical thing that you would suggest they do?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think you actually hinted at this a minute ago, Phil. I would really say have a plan that you'll keep in mind, but also be open to unexpected opportunities, those doors that open, and it may be something that wasn't part of your original plan. And I think the best example of that from my experience is when I made the jump from newspaper journalism to Penn State. Initially, I wasn't seeking the Penn State job. Somebody knew about it and encouraged me to apply for it. And initially, I really wasn't inclined to do that because I was happy doing what I was doing. And the Penn State job fell sort of loosely within the definition of public relations, even though it wasn't specifically that. And in my mind, you know, I was doing the more pure sort of journalism. I didn't want to go over to the dark side. But I went and it was such a wonderful experience. And I met so many incredible researchers in different fields doing work that I never would have known anything about otherwise. So definitely would encourage taking that leap. I would also say be flexible. If you're in your early 20s today, you're likely to have numerous jobs or even numerous careers over the course of a lifetime. So just, you know, stay open to that and be willing to kind of follow where the road leads you. One thing that I hear a lot, and I totally sympathize with it and think it's wonderful, in our interaction with students at NORD, and I love the work that we do with students who are preparing for careers in patient care or research or drug development. But they often say things like, you know, they want to do something that really touches lives and really matters to someone. And there's so many opportunities related to healthcare from all angles where you can do that. And they're not necessarily the most obvious ones. You don't have to be, you know, Florence Nightingale at the patient's bedside. But, you know, just we often have opportunities to bring patients or parents of patients into various events and have them speak about how, you know, certain research may have changed their lives or helped them in some way. And I often, when we do that, I'll have somebody come up to me afterward and say, you know, I worked on this product, but I was in the lab and I never actually got to see the results of my work. And it's so meaningful, you know, to realize that at every step along the way in that process of developing diagnostics or treatments or medical devices, the work that you're doing can be very important. NORD had our summit a couple of weeks ago, and we had a session we called Innovation Transforms Lives. And we had 3 speakers, 2 patients, and 1 parent, and they all had 3 very different rare diseases. But in each case, there had been no treatment for years. And then now there is a treatment, a very effective treatment. And they just compared, you know, their life before treatment and after. And for everybody who played any role in that along the way, you know, they really did transform those lives. So I'll stop there, but those would be my top advice.
You know, I love that. That reminds me of when we were just starting the bioscience program at the school where I was at the time. We would steal students from the nursing program. And what we found was, you know, nursing had a tremendous number of applicants, and they wanted to help people. They had this desire to help people. And so we were able to convince them that you don't have to be a nurse to help people. You can work in the lab, just as you've described, or you can work on drug discovery, and that's helping people too without the need for a bedside manner. So it worked out kind of well for us. So what a wonderful point. If you just set out to try to help people, or you have something like that in mind, you can find a way to do that through your career. Yeah, I love that. So Rishi, it looks like the workforce is kind of changing. You know, that's something that people are talking about a lot. It's a whole new world. You know, how am I going to find my place in the workforce in the future? So what do you see as key aspects of the workforce in the next 5 years?
Good question. I think it also creates a lot of unease, anxiety for folks, especially that are just graduating, looking for the first job, don't have a lot of experience, and are trying to get a toehold. Unemployment is very high right now, and we all know why. It's related obviously to the pandemic, and the pandemic in the near term is not going anywhere. And so this is a really concerning time for folks that are either just unemployed or have never been employed. And so the advice that I would give is to focus on 2 areas, primarily relationships, who they know, their network. And I think about it kind of in 2 ways. Kind of your vertical relationship is the person that's 5 years your senior, maybe 10 years your senior would be a second person, 15 years your senior would be a third person. That's your vertical family. And also your horizontal family. That's your cohort, the people that grew up with you, that have essentially the same sort of experiences as you. And I think all too often we focus heavily, because of the way we're educated, on cultivating horizontal relationships. So I know my med school buddies very well. They know me well. That was never hard. It was never hard to kind of inculcate friendship. And so we all have a really strong horizontal family. And when we need help, we reach out to them. But if you think about these cohorts, you know, if you're a new grad, it's not like you're getting many connections from your friend who's also a new grad. You know, you're both kind of struggling in the same way. So there you really need to rely on your vertical family. Your vertical family is the person that actually graduated 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they can actually help you out. And we don't typically focus hard on cultivating a strong vertical family. And at best, you know, when I talk to students to say, who's going to write your letter of recommendation, they struggle to think of 3, 4 people that might write a letter for them. If I said, hey, tell me the names of 3 or 4 of your friends, they'll come up with it with no problem. Again, very strong horizontal network, very weak vertical network. And so I think that that's really important to cultivate among folks that are actually looking for jobs, is how do you cultivate that vertical network? There are online tools. LinkedIn is a great example of a free tool that everyone should be using to cultivate that vertical network. It's a very powerful way to do that. That's one piece, is relationship building. And, you know, it tied into that is mentorship. You know, your vertical family, we have a name for it. We call them your mentors. And so that is mentorship, is that vertical family. That's one big piece. Another big piece is what was just said, is that this cohort of folks coming out looking for jobs, they're not looking for 1 job, they're looking for 5 jobs, 8 jobs in their life. And so you shouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm going to be a pediatrician and then that's it. You're going to be a pediatrician that needs to learn how to do public health, that needs to learn how to do education. You're going to move. You're going to have to do that. My story is not unique. I'm not a snowflake. Everybody's story is this story. Everybody has moved. And so in that sense, you need to cultivate skills. When I was at the CDC, one of the skills that I really wanted to learn was data analysis. It doesn't matter if I'm using data analysis tools to assess a data set of vaccines, how they work, whether they work or don't work. It's a data analysis skill. I take that skill, I bring it to a new job, and now I can analyze data around educational outcomes. It's that core skill that you need to hone and craft. And so I think a person that has a really strong set of relationships, both horizontal, but really vertical is where the weaknesses are, and also has a core set of skills, is going to do very well. And then finally, what I was kind of getting to before with like following your curiosity, it's really trusting yourself, recognizing that we don't live in a world of black and white, we live in a world of gray, and being comfortable with that uncertainty, saying, hey, I don't know what my job is going to be 5 years from now, but I know that right now what I'm doing is pretty amazing, and I'm cultivating relationships, and I'm gaining new skills. The moment those things stop is the moment you should probably start looking for another job. And so those are the things that I would say. I think a trap we fall into, and I hear this, I have a 4-year-old son, is we have this mindset of like, what are you going to be when you grow up? It's the worst question in the world, because it really has a false premise. It's this idea that you have this job out there, and then your job is to kind of like figure out how to get to that job. And that's just not true. It's, we also have the phrase like, find your passion. It's not this thing that you have to find that's out there and you have to go on a search and a hunt to find it. It's really, again, follow your curiosity. It's within you. Just let it speak to you, and you'll kind of go wherever you go. You're not going on some sort of end game hunt, which I think is a really frustrating thing for folks. So they think, oh, my friend wants to do this, my other friend wants to do this, but I don't know what I want to do. That's not it. It's, well, what do you find yourself kind of gravitating towards? Do more of that. And along the way, build relationships and make sure that you cultivate your skills.
That is great. I think there's a popular song that has the lyric, I spent all this time finding myself, I didn't even know I was lost. But what wonderful comments about, there's not this idea that there's this place you're going to end up and you just need to find it somehow. Yeah, that's really wonderful. I always grew up wanting to be just like my father. I wanted to do what my dad did because he just was everything to me. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I realized, oh my gosh, I've gotten my wish. And that's not at all what I meant. I wanted to have a career like my father. But the careers that I ended up going through were really not like that generation. It was kind of a different thing. And so I needed to accept that. One of the things that I see and I'm very encouraged about is the young people that are coming into the workforce today are demanding the things that my generation only dreamed of. They're demanding things like diversity in the workplace. They are demanding that the company be a community and an environmental citizen. So I'm just so encouraged and refreshed by those things. And I would suggest to the young folks coming out of education or coming into the workforce today, continue with those demands. Don't let up on them. You will find companies that will be able to satisfy you in those ways, and they should. And I want to go back also to one of Mary's comments about just make sure that it's fulfilling, it's purposeful, it's meaningful work. That's important. And I think something you said there, Rishi, is if you find that you're going to work and you're not getting that fulfillment, it's time to start looking for another job because life's too short to spend doing something that's not meaningful in your life. One of the things I was really excited to learn about, Mary, was the NORD student chapters. Will you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, I'd be happy to. When I joined NORD, which was back in 1999, around that time or shortly after that, we were becoming aware that the original generation of researchers and medical experts on rare diseases and just sort of genetic conditions in general, which is increasingly what we're looking at in healthcare today, that many of those medical experts were approaching retirement, and there didn't seem to be a younger generation coming along behind them. So we actually talked about this for a while in terms of one researcher in particular, Roscoe Brady, who had been at NIH, had been an advisor to some of the patient organizations, was kind of revered for his work and had played a very important role in development of some of the early enzyme replacement therapies. He was very close to retirement, and there just didn't seem to be anybody coming along behind him. And so NORD really expanded our efforts to try to help promote education of students preparing for a whole range of healthcare related careers. And this included careers in patient care as physicians or genetic counselors or nurses, all the physician assistants, and then careers in research, whether at an academic institution or an industry, and just in general in development of drugs and diagnostics and medical devices. And so we've done various things over the years, but one thing that seems to have been very successful in recent years is that we developed NORD, a series of NORD clubs, which are in high schools, and then chapters, which are at universities and medical schools. And we currently have 24 chapters, including at least one in Georgia. There's one that was started by the genetic counseling program at Emory University. But these are a really wonderful way for students to explore careers, to interact with NORD. They can get scholarships to, come to our annual conference, or we do an annual patient family forum in the summer. They display posters, they help us when they have an interest in writing and an ability. Some of the students have helped us write information for our rare disease database on our website, and then we have it reviewed by doctors who are experts on those diseases for accuracy. But our entire staff loves working with the students. We always remind them, don't forget about the zebras, because one of our messages to medical professionals is, when you hear hoofbeats, don't assume it's a horse, it may be a zebra. But I just love seeing this young generation, and they're such incredible, bright, very committed, as Phil was saying. They're looking for meaningful ways to really improve people's lives. So I love seeing this new generation come along.
Thank you. That is wonderful. So Rishi, I want to put you on the spot here. Can you offer up some closing remarks about your thoughts on the future in osmosis?
Yeah, my thoughts could go in many different directions, but I'll go in this one, which is, I think that as we look at all these macro situations, obviously we're in the middle of an election, we're looking at unemployment rates, COVID-19 is still upon us. Some truths seem very apparent, which is that as we go forward, we're going to need to pull together, and there's going to be a need to figure out what the new economy is going to look like. Increasingly, we see really across the world this coming to terms with technology and kind of what is the role of the human being with technology. I mean, it used to be that I would cram my head with facts And now what's the point when I have a cell phone right here? I can just look up stuff. And really, it's really how do you look up things, not how do you remember things. That's a different skill set. And as we go forward, let's say 10, 15, 20 years down the road, increasingly it's going to be the people that are most effective at working with technology rather than the people that try to outcompete technology by being the best memorizers or something. You're never going to win that game. And I think the unique skill that we have in working with technology, the unique thing that I can bring that my phone cannot bring is a sense of humanity, right? So I can bring my human self. So if I'm with a patient, if I'm with a colleague, if I'm with my significant other, really in a personal, professional setting, it doesn't really matter. If I can bring a sense of humanity to that interaction, then that's something that technology can offer. Because at our very core, human beings want other human beings. Like that sense of connection is what we all want, what we crave. And how to do that well, I think is going to be something we all have to learn. We're going to have to get better and better at communication skills, at interpersonal skills, at understanding how to be vulnerable, at understanding how to use both language but nonverbal cues. Like all these kinds of things are things that you can get better at. And I think that's a true myth. I think there's a myth that I believed in 2 decades ago, that many of my classmates believed in 2 decades ago, which is that you're either born with it or you're not. You either have this skill or you don't. But the fact is, like any other skill, you can get better at it if you commit yourself. And I think as a country and really as a world, we're going to need to really commit ourselves to learning this skill, how to, craft our socio-emotional quotient to be higher. And as we do that, I think all things are going to get better. You're going to see less at an interpersonal level, less friction, less anger, less hostility. And that just kind of builds out, nation states would get along better if you had more of those kind of skills in play. So I think that that's the thing I would leave us with, and also kind of pertains to jobs. And the kinds of jobs that are going to be out there are the jobs that demand that people have really great interpersonal relationships and skill building around kind of what I would call, everything from like communication skills to trust building to empathy, compassion, all those kinds of things. So I think those are the kinds of things that we're going to need to work on, much less so, rote learning, like understanding how to memorize multiplication tables and things like that. So I think the more we can kind of push into socio-emotional learning, the better off we'll all be.
I cannot think of a more effective or eloquent way to bring this session to a close. Thank you. That was just really, really wonderful. So I want to thank you, Rishi, and I want to thank Mary for your contributions. Great, great session. Thank you so much. And thank you to Georgia Bio for allowing this opportunity. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Everett.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, panel. Great discussion. Really enjoyed that. Thank you, Maria and your team, and good afternoon, everyone. What a fantastic 3 days. It's hard to believe that so much has been packed into so little time with so many experts assembled and all done virtually, no less. Congratulations to our Georgia Bio leadership team and production crew, and on behalf of all the participants and speakers, a huge thank you to all of you. To our participants, thank you again for joining us and making this our first ever virtual summit, and hopefully our last, a very successful 2020 Georgia Bio Innovation Summit. Thank you to our sponsors. Boehringer Ingelheim, I can speak for, is proud to have been among the many sponsors of the summit, and it's been my honor and pleasure to chair the summit. And congratulations to our award winners. It's been a real pleasure to share perspectives with fellow biosciences colleagues, and no doubt we'll all come away with renewed purpose after hearing some of the from many of the sharp scientific minds. For sure, it reinforces for us at BI our commitment to the well-being of animals and people. As we wrap up, I'm reminded of some simple advice of our opening keynote speaker, Dr. Michelle McMurray, shared, and reinforced right now by the panel that just spoke with us. And that is that we all need to be curious. So appropriate to our work in biosciences, for sure. And for BI, it actually reminds me of an interesting old saying that most of us probably know, but let me change it just a bit. Curiosity doesn't kill the cat, curiosity saves the cat. And that's pretty important to our industry, to be sure. We look forward to ongoing collaboration with each of you in the new year. That's almost upon us, hard to believe. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to 2020 actually being over on some level. And we're already looking forward to next year's summit, which hopefully will be face-to-face again. I wish you all a great weekend and the rest of the year. And above all, be curious, because what we do really matters. Thank you again.